You'd have an opportunity to travel the entire world, singing and chanting. What have you learned about people wherever you go? I mean, what's the one thing or a couple things that you've noticed throughout the world?
Everybody wants the same thing. Everybody's stuck in their own version of what it is, of who they are, but everybody wants out of that version. Everybody wants, no matter how they say it to themselves, no matter how they describe it to themselves, everybody wants to be free and released from the prison of thoughts and stories and emotions that we're locked into. Everybody. It's amazing. Everywhere you go. Mm. And different cultures have different ways of finding some relief, you know? And like when I was in South Africa, Mandela had just been let out. It was the happiest year, you know, they've ever had because he was free, the politics hadn't started yet. So I was in there producing a record for somebody, a jazz record at the time. And we needed another tune, you know? And they had so much music because they had been holding all this music. They couldn't publish it, they couldn't do anything with it because of the apartheid. Right. So I said to Hugh Masekela was there in the studio with us. He was, I think he played on the record. Yeah. So I said, Hugh, how can this music be so joyful? How can you? He said, we have to. You know, so the way they got through the torture and the darkness was this music gave them such joy. These songs are the most joyful songs I've ever heard in my life. Township, it's extraordinary how happy and how up. This was all written in the darkest apartheid times. Mm. It's amazing. You know, and everywhere you go, they have a different way of coping.
Mm-hmm. So when people come to see you, when they go to see like Bob Seger or Bruce Springsteen, they have a particular kind of music that they like. Mm-hmm. But when they come to see you, there seems to be another aspect to it. So when people come to see you, what do you think they're coming to see or hear?
You want my version of the way I see it? What Maharaji's bringing them to help, to bless them, to transmit to them that there's something else, to give them that feeling inside of themselves that they can find it there. Mm-hmm. And whether there's a conscious recognition of that at the time or they don't have to buy into anything, they don't have to follow my guru, they don't have to follow me. It's not like that. It's just given free. It's called prasad. Mm-hmm. And Maharaji gives this away. He does that. It's him chanting, you know. It looks like me, right? But it's his transmission. It's all his grace. And I see it touch people the same way everywhere. Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah. The same way. I sang in Bosnia, Herzegovina, right? You know, and the place, they preserved the holes in the wall from the shells were filled with transparent plastic, heavy duty, so you could see through the wall in places because they didn't want to lose the memory of that suffering that they had to go through. Right. I mean, you know, the Serbs, you know, they were just shelling from the mountains all around. People came out of the house. They were people who shot from where they call them from the snipers. Yeah. You know, and they couldn't eat. They couldn't get out of the house. They couldn't get food. They couldn't get water. Yeah. And it was amazing. And
you mentioned that, and you had talked about when I saw you once. You were moved to tears actually because you had a chance to chant at Auschwitz.
Yeah.
Where I know some of your family was.
I'm not sure about that. There's one thing I don't know because nobody in my family ever mentioned it. I didn't know about Auschwitz until much, much, much later. Okay. I never heard any discussion about it. I know that one side of my family had actually been in England since the late 1890s, since the 1890s. Mm-hmm. So that whole side of the family was not involved, but they must have known people. They must have had family back then, but nobody ever mentioned it.
And what was the experience like?
When I went to Auschwitz, it was, you know, it was mind-blowing. I mean, I went there to bear witness to the suffering. Mm-hmm. I went there with the Zen peacemakers, and Bernie Glassman, who's a Zen master, who goes to places that you don't want to go to, where you're trying to avoid, where you're afraid to confront. And he takes people there to help them overcome their fears, which is the only thing that stops us, our own fears. So I went under his guiding, and so I went with this. I didn't go there to just get lost in the pain and suffering. I went there to bear witness to it. So what does that mean? I had to overcome my own subjective shit to really be with those souls that experienced that, right? They're not to be with somebody, to be present. You can't be projecting your own stuff onto them because you never see the person. So it took days and days to go through this process of not projecting my own views on things. Put me through a lot of stuff. For instance, at one point I recognized that there was a lot of talk about what the guards had done and how horrible it should be. Unbelievable. But then I realized, wait a minute, if I'd been born in Germany to a family of Nazis and educated that way, and I wouldn't have this kind of detached, liberal New York view of things, I'd be a Nazi. And I would believe that. And I would have been done just what those guards would have done. I'm no different than them. I'm no better than them. And it was very powerful. We tend to think of ourselves as somewhat, better or privileged or a little more understanding of things. But it's karmically, through our karmas, we were born in a situation we weren't forced to do that by our karmas and create more negative karmas of suffering by causing so much suffering, right? So we're able, but still, to see that there's no basic difference between the two of us. It brought us so much compassion in me for those people, for the guards, as well as the prisoners, of course. But the guards you don't usually think about. You want to kill them. Right. They did all this, They didn't have to do that. What else were they supposed to do? Right. And how would they know there was any option? I mean, maybe that's a little simplistic. Right. But it's hard to tell, It was powerful. And the other thing was to bear witness means to not judge. So how do you do that, right? I was furious for the first 3 or 4 days. I would look up at the sun as it rose over this beautiful green lawns, and the trees were all turning gold and red, and it was beautiful. And then the guards, the guide said to us, "You see all this color in the greenery and everything? There wasn't anything here except mud. They ate everything. They ate the bark off of the trees. They ate every grass. There was only mud, every leaf on every tree. So it didn't look like that then. So, but here it was, and the sun was shining in all its glory. And I look up at the sun, how the fuck do you dare shine on this place? How dare you? Right? For days it was like that. And then I went, oh, that's what the sun does. It shines on the good, the bad, the up, the down. It shines on everyone equally. And I recognize that that is what real love is. Non-judging, equal, same for all. It was hard, but I saw it, I felt it. I went, oh, it kind of liberated something, from that. How can you do this? It does it because that's what it does. That's the nature of the sun, to love or to shine equally on everyone. It was powerful, And then your heart has to widen to not just include all those people, but also yourself. We don't include ourselves when we think of compassion and kindness. And Buddha said that you can search the whole universe and never find anyone more deserving of kindness and compassion than yourself. But we work from here out. We don't work, And that's why we're so fucked up. Because we don't we can't blind ourselves, you know. We can even if we're good people, we care about other people, but we don't know how to take care of ourselves. And there's something that's not quite right there, you know, because we perpetuate our own unhappiness. But you can't, if you're treating all people equally, aren't you part of all people? So it's real love is like the sun, you know. And if you're not a part of that, then you can't separate yourself from that. There's me and others. They deserve love. I'll give them, you know. What about you? You know, you can't be identified with that and still be doing what's in your own best interests. So you have to. We ultimately, they say, we recognize that it's the same one of us everywhere. You know, looking out of all these different eyes, it's that one, you know, deep in there. And that's part of what bearing witness allows you to do, to see the reality of other people's lives from their point of view, which is very difficult because we're always projecting and judging and evaluating. Everybody hurts. So, it doesn't seem reasonable, but to really feel others' pain, you have to be able to feel your own too. It's like you have to melt down a little bit. Can't cling to all those, the things that we use to protect ourselves from fear and pain and the guilt and the shame that we carry around with us. So that's the power of bearing witness and the power of, if you approach a place like Auschwitz or New York with your eyes open, it's quite powerful, you know. Quite powerful. And then you start to see your own stories too, and then you can let go of them. If you don't see them, you can't let go of them. Yeah. But all these practices help us by making us more aware of the way we project onto people and the fact that we are projecting so much. And then you get into a situation where that's not gonna work, like Auschwitz, you know, especially if you go in that, because Bernie is so deep into that presence, into that being, and not projecting. His presence allowed me to come into a deeper realization of that, you know, because he's in a deeper place. If I had gone with a busload of tourists, it might not have happened, you know. So, yeah. I've been there twice. I'm not sure I'll go back, but twice was. And we did the same thing last year. We went to South Dakota to the reservation.
Oh, we did.
Pine Ridge Reservation. And we were with the Lakota Sioux. That were very powerful too. Very powerful. It's very similar. The trauma that's still being acted out every day in their lives. And how to be with that. It's really powerful. So,
Thank you.
thank you. Thanks for coming. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Good. You're welcome. Okay.